Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lorelei Shamayo. This is the MeWe Metaphysics and Wellness Fairs for energizing body, mind, heart, and soul. We have events throughout the Northwest and online, and we interview our practitioners and vendors, so you get a chance to know who we are before you meet us at an event. I'm here today interviewing Reverend Dr. P. Sufenas, Virius, Lupus. It's lovely to be with you.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Lorelei.
You're very welcome. So what is it that you do? What do you offer at our events?
Well, what I will be offering is Ephesia Grammata readings and also certain other practices associated with them. And I suspect that's probably not familiar to most people. So the Ephesia Grammata is one of the most ancient sets of magical words known to the ancient Greek tradition. It kind of is a strange phenomenon in that it clearly originates in a sort of folk tradition, but it's reflected in very high, learned magical texts as well. And so it was something that was, kind of known throughout ancient Greece and into the Egyptian and Roman periods and cultures as well, when Greece, Rome, and Egypt were, mixing quite a bit in late antiquity. And we don't really we don't really know the origins. It's not clear entirely. They look kind of linguistically, etymologically, like they're probably some form of ancient Greek. But the interesting thing about them is the way that they were used. There seems to be a tradition of their use for protection, for causing things to become invisible. I actually have some firsthand experience of that involving a TSA agent, but that's a story for another time. Anyway, but something else that is a kind of newer usage for them is divination. And it works very, very well as a binary divination system. Mm-hmm. And now this is the thing, obviously people have difficulties with the idea of a binary.
By binary, you mean like yes, no, left, right kind of thing?
Exactly, right. It's either one or the other. And yet, there's depending on which version you use, there's either 6 or 7 Ephesia Grammata. So many people would say, well, that's not really binary, but it's binary with a twist. It's binary with a little bit more information. So if you ask a yes or no question, there is one answer that's an absolute just no. There is one answer that's an absolute most possible enthusiastic, absolutely yes, have a parade. It's such a positive yes. Then there's other ones that are more kind of ambiguous. So there's one that says, yes, if this is a physical matter, if you're asking about money, if you're asking about, should I buy this, should I do this thing that involves something physical, if you get that particular one, it's a yes, but very definitely if it's a physical thing. There's another one that basically means you're speaking true. This is the true word, this is the true thing. Which there's some interpretation around that as well. But then there's others that are kind of the answer literally means shadowy, and so that's kind of if you're thinking magic 8-ball, it's sort of like either ask again later or ask a better question, sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. And then you've got one that is literally not now. It means in time. And so, yes or no to this, not now. It's not time yet. It's in the fullness of the seasons, it will come to pass, kind of a thing. So there's quite a bit of nuance to it, which is really useful, because on a yes or no question, obviously it's helpful to hear either yes or no, but it's also helpful to kind of hear, well, this may be a yes, but just not for now. Or, there's one that literally means hairy. And so it's like, well, you could, but it's going to be real hairy.
Right.
Are you willing to take the difficulties? You know.
So one way that I address, or one way that I work with binary types of question opportunities is that I ask a series of questions. Do you do things like that where the question changes?
Yeah, that is often kind of what kind of has to happen. And it's very useful for just kind of a divination session when I do them for myself, which I do pretty regularly. And I've been doing this, using this system now for 10 years. It can run very long because you get yes and well, then it's very short. If you get no, or you get ask a better question, or not now, or whatever, but you need an answer on something, you want to move on something, you want to do something, then you just keep asking more questions and getting I did a session last night where I was asking about a particular devotional practice, and I was asking particular things. Should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? And I was getting no, 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 not now, etc. And then I said, is it something that's in this book? No. Is it something that's in this book? No. Is it something in one of the books on the shelf here? Yes. Okay. Then we have to go through the other books, and in that way, it can be very specific. It's kind of, some people might look at that as being kind of naive in a way of, it's almost like dealing with a child. No, yes, no, okay, that's all right, sort of a thing. But at the same time, it then requires you to be very mentally flexible. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact about this that you really have to formulate a good question. Because people are just not used to asking yes or no questions in a divination session. And
like, as you said, there's a whole art to what questions to ask. And I think we get to know what the topic is, and we get more in touch with our own awareness and our own intuition about things by asking so many questions.
Exactly. Yeah. And it can help you refine it. Because oftentimes people will come in and they'll say, what should I do? And I say, well, you got to narrow it down more. What should you do about what? And do you have options there? Okay, what are the options? Let's talk through those. And so I mean, it can be for my practice personally. I love tarot. I love lots of different runes, lot castings, things like that. These are all fantastic systems. They're beautiful. The symbolism is rich. The tradition is rich. This, comes from a pretty venerable tradition, but it's just, it's so much more straightforward in a way, which is kind of refreshing. And it does kind of force you to be very precise, because I mean that's always the thing of, if someone comes in and says, I'd like a general reading, and then they get a general reading, and there may not be a lot of action items or anything that can come out of that. And it might feel good in the moment, but I haven't had a decent general reading with a tarot deck in decades.
And how did you get started with this? How did you find it? How did it find you?
Right. So it came up kind of in my own practices and in my own study. I study ancient religions. My actual doctorate is in Celtic studies, but it specializes in religion and mythology. So I've done in my previous degrees, I've done religious studies, and this sort of a thing, Greek and Roman practice, is a big section of the spiritual practice that I have, and particularly the Greco-Roman Egyptian syncretism of late antiquity, where all of these traditions that had been going for centuries, if not millennia, in the case of Egypt, were all intermixing and intermingling, and new things were coming out of it. And so this came up several times, and I thought I'm going to explore that a little bit more and find out what I can about it. And then a particular day arrived where I went, I just need to start doing this. And it's like, okay, well, there's either 6 or 7 Ephesia grammata. I mean, that means Ephesian letters, the letters of Ephesus, but they're actually words. So the 6 or 7, I usually go with the 7 these days, is oskion, ketoskion, leaks, tetrax, domnomeneos, isia, and dacion, right? And saying this over and over again, writing it over and over again, this is part of the practice for me. And so back in those days, I started with the 6, and I thought I need something to write these down on. And I'm not a particularly crafty person, and I thought I need something to write this down on to use as kind of like runes or I Ching coins or whatever. And so I thought, well, I saw some little pieces of wood that were some miscellaneous component to something that somebody assembled out in the junk drawer in the kitchen. And I went out there and I looked through the entire drawer, and well, sure enough, there were 6 of them. And they were all exactly the same size. And that's perfect for this, because you don't really want to have them be differentiated. And so I wrote out my first set, and I performed a ritual to dedicate it, and started using it immediately. And my first question was, did I do that right? And I got yes. And it's like, okay, is this the procedure going forward? And kind of laid it out and had a session, and it was like, okay, yeah, that's something. But it's also, I carry 2 sets around me at all times, the very first set I made, and then also the one that I use most often these days. And it serves as a protective amulet as well.
Did you have them with you?
Yep, I've got them right here. This is the set that I use the most these days. There is evidence that people in the ancient world tattooed them on themselves. There was an ancient Greek wrestler who had them tattooed on himself. He
Wow.
was a pretty wrestler. So
Are we able to see them, or do we have to wait for a reading?
Sure, I can show them to you. I just have to do what I always do when I open or close the bag. Oskion, ketoskion, leaks, tetrax, domnomeneos, isia, and dacion. Okay. And we'll just pull one out at random here. Ooh, there we go. We've already talked about this one. This is tetrax. So this particular set is made of madrona wood, which I've always found to be kind of my own personal sacred tree in the area that I grew up. And, then I have the full word written on one side, and then an abbreviation on the other side, so that if I'm pulling it out and just looking at it and putting it back, either way it comes up, I'll know what it is. Yeah, that's how it works. And like I said, this particular set has 7. My first set has 6. So I've got the 6 version and the 7 version with me at all times. And depending on what's going on, one might be better than the other, depending on the topic. And so, yeah, that's what I do with them. And then in terms of their usage as for protection and things like that, there was a practice that I ended up having in a dream. I think it was about 2014 or so. That it looked like, I hate to make this comparison in this context, but it looked like a first-person shooter video game of, I could kind of see myself going through this space and whatever. And there was this horrific scene unfolding in front of me, and I knew I had to do something to protect myself. And the viewpoint of the game of having, my hand out in front and being able to see it, then allowed me to see what was actually happening of a particular set of hand movements and gestures that went along with chanting the names of each of the Ephesia Grammata. And the first time I gave a presentation on this, which was in 2014, I did that particular thing, in front of other people for the very first time. I'd been using it for a while before that. And people were blown away. I mean, people were like in shock. They were like, oh my gosh, what was that? And, and so I developed a version of it also where I use a magic wand, because of course that always looks more magical, and it's kind of cool to do that. And that's just as effective. And so doing that on people to banish negativity. Sometimes I've used it in healing work, and people, if nothing else after that, even if it doesn't manage to, heal whatever is bothering them, have felt a sense of being energized and being protected, and I mean, even just having that,
Great.
goes such a long way. So, and can help in that process. So, yeah.
And it sounds like you can use this to answer questions on anything, right?
Pretty much. It's another caveat that I give is it's not great for determining the future of will this happen kind of things.
Yeah.
I've had a few occasions where people have asked me that, and because they've been friends of mine, I've kind of gone, okay, we'll ask that, but let's just understand that this may not be entirely accurate. But in a couple of cases, it was totally spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, as with most divination systems, as the reader, you get a little bit more than just what is in the reading. So for example, a friend of mine was in the hospital and I went and visited him, and he was told he would be getting out that late afternoon or early evening, and I had to be heading back. And so they came out and sat outside with me at the bus for a couple of minutes while I was waiting for the bus to arrive. And they said, can you do that thing that you do and do a read? And I said, sure. And what do you want to ask? And he said, am I going to get out of here today? And I said, okay. And so we did that, and I got a no. And I said, in fairness, don't let this be, maybe it's just from the point of view of right now, it's no, but in 3 hours, when there's more information, they'll say, all right, great, go.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's what ended up happening. He waited for several hours, and then they finally came in and they said, we need to keep you at least another couple days. So, sometimes it's really dead on, and sometimes not so much.
Great. All right. Well, if people want to connect with you more online and learn more about what you do, where do they go?
So the easiest would be my website, which is psufenaslupus.wordpress.com.
Great. And could you please spell that for people?
Yes. So that's PSUFENASVIRUSLUPUS.wordpress.com.
Great. Well, I'm excited for people to experience your work and discover this ancient tradition, modern format. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long time coming, kind of presenting it in this context, and so I'm excited. It'll be, I think it will be enjoyable for people, but it'll also be just enjoyable for me to share this in a very practical way with people. So
that's great. Yeah, thank you so much. And for
Thank
all of
you.
you listening and watching, you can learn about more about all of our events at MeWeFairs.com. That's MEWEFAIRS.com. Thanks so much, DPSVL.
Take care.